Hi, everybody. Welcome to The New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. And today is Wednesday. We've got Dr. McDaniel joining us, and we have a special going on. We're all getting ready for summer and taking personal responsibility for our health, our wealth, and our personal safety. And Dr. McDaniel will tell us about it right after our presentation. Today, he is telling us about oh gosh, I should have made him pronounce it for me before we got started. Stassen inversion. I don't know. We'll see what he has to say about it. So I'll be right back right after this.
Joining today's session together, I think I should say a few words that when we get into this, you wonder what in Sound Hill's going on. Most people just want to know what this dietary supplement that I call New Eden will do for them. Frequently, people say, I've got diabetes, will this help me? Well, the proper response in this country is to say only an FDA-approved drug can claim or represent to do anything for diabetes or a disease or a syndrome. But if the person says, I have a problem with the blood sugar being too high in my blood, which is a biomarker, we can respond to it and say, and we have evidence that more comprehensive nutrition supporting the code in DNA that controls cellular synthesis will make bioactive compounds that will normalize the biochemistry. The point I'm trying to make is that dietary supplements do not treat, cure, or mitigate disease or correct an abnormal condition by law. However, the preamble to the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of '94, which is not the law, but only a statement of why hearings and the legislation was considered, starts out with the first paragraph, and I paraphrase, that science and medicine has determined that optimal nutrition is essential for good health, to prevent disease, and to restore health. You might quickly say, well, what more would you want from optimal nutrition? Well, you would want this statement to be in the law, because in the law labeling section, it very overtly expresses, and I paraphrase again, that in the United States, it's a law that only an FDA-approved pharmaceutical drug can represent or claim, treat, cure, or mitigate, or correct an abnormal dietary condition. So you must speak in terms of biomarkers. You might want to say, oh, I've got a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Well, have I ever done anything for that? You can say, I can't respond to that question. However, if you have problems with the signaling in your nervous system to your muscles, and has this ever helped that kind of problem, we can talk about it because of the truth that is in the preamble to this legislation that created the dietary supplement industry. Now, from a practical standpoint, we'll be talking about different things today. One will be this book, Sassoon, which I'll show you a copy of it later, about a village healer in Belize. It was believed to be the last village healer trained by the Mayan priests that built the pyramids of South and Central America. And we will get into that. But I read somewhere from Thomas Edison that he said, the physician of the future will not use drugs for disease, but will use electricity. But if you know anything about the controversies about Thomas A. Edison and Nikola Tesla, many people will say that Tesla was just a electrical genius who was only interested in showing that he could do different things with his inventions, but had no interest in the commercial value, but that Edison knew how to take it and commercialize it. So I bought the book, the inventions and speeches and patents of Nikola Tesla, and we will talk about some of it because recently I got a new biochemistry book that is called Life Redux by, I'll try to put it here, I think well, I can't get the author to show it. I'll slowly bring it up. His name is A.S. Naidu, which I think must be a by God blooming genius, because all former biochemistry texts that I have had, if you are familiar with this equation that's so often associated with Einstein, he said E equal mc squared. Well, the E stands for energy, the M stands for mass, and the C stands for the speed of light, which is a very large number, squared, which is an even huge number, to indicate that in a mass or a molecule or a compound, there's an awful lot of energy. Well, all the old books on biochemistry focused on mass or compounds that are present in nature, are made by the cells under control of the DNA and cellular synthesis. But this new book that I showed you, Redux, is focused on the energy and thinks of or presents that the life processes in plants and in animals, which has long challenged the mind of man. How did this ever get to come? Because if you look at the composition of matter chart, there are about 100 different elements, and each one of the little squares on this chart is a packet of stable energy. And I frequently point out that I have here an artist's palette with the primary colors from which, by mixing them together, like you see blue and yellow there, will make green. You can make all the colors of the spectrum by mixing different amounts of these colors. Well, in the energy spectrum, you can make all the different compounds by what the code in the DNA does that can take totally lifeless elements. In Eureka, you can have plant or animal, which gets to human life. And so in this lecture, we're going to go from what I would say the foxholes and trenches of health down in Belize with Don Helio Ponte, who was trained by the Mayan priests, to Tesla. So with this background, which I only present to point out that there is ancient insight and wisdom that is up to 5,000 years old, that again and again has been presented, and that modern science is validating wisdom and insight that has been observed long before the scientific processes were even existed. So with that, we'll go to the lecture. This is the first slide of this presentation, and you will see that we'll go from the story of the book Saskatoon to statements by Nikola Tesla, which is very much in the modern discussions with the Tesla automobile. It's electric. And I will try to point out before we're through that energy and the frequencies of energy that come from the sun are very important in the life process. So we're kind of going from one extreme to the other when you go from Donahilio and Belize to Nikola Tesla. But the reason I'm doing this is there was ancient insight and wisdom based on empiric observations before science existed. And that's validated is misspelled, validated by modern science. Now, and among the ancient Greeks, Hippocrates, who's given the term Father Western Medicine, if you'll look into quotes by Hippocrates on the web, said if we could provide to the patient the optimal nutrition and exercise, quote, not too much, not too little, we have provided the safest path to good health. That was nutrition and exercise. And we have a series on the blue zones that the World Health Organization has pointed out where there are areas on Earth where people lived in good health to 90 to over 100. And the most fundamental thing is nutrition combined with daily activities or exercise. And then Hippocrates wrote, which is something that has over and over again really challenged me, but he observed that let your food be your medicine and your medicine your food. And that when we held up the dietary supplement New Eden, that this is what I have now spent in my 36 years of trying to perfect. And by simple terms, the most simple terms, it's putting back into your diet what you used to get from the family garden and orchard when you allowed the produce to mature on the plant, which allowed the genes in the plant to put the nutrients that your genes call for to make bioactive compounds that run the process in biochemistry of life. Now, Hippocrates had a biographer by the name of Eustace, and I was so fascinated by those statements that I found out what he wrote, that his grandfather, his father, and two sons were all Greek physicians, and they all believed that disease and syndromes were caused by unhappy gods up on the Elysian plain, and we were down here on Earth much like puppets controlled by the strings from above by the gods, and that if you had a disease or a syndrome, it's because there's some god up there unhappy with you. And so the Greek doctors saw the patient and says, this is mild or moderate or very severe problem, and you need to go to this various selections of temples and priests and make a contribution to make the gods happy, and you'll get over your disease. Well, Hippocrates rose up and did a group of autopsies and said, it's not due to unhappy gods up there. There's some bad things going on inside the human body. And he started a little medical school teaching this to young Greeks that wanted to be physicians. And the doctors of that time and the priests got together and went to the government, which is called the hegemon. Greece was a sort of a combination of a king and a general and high priest, and accused Hippocrates of defiling the dead, because in the ancient Greece custom, the human body was precious and holy, and he had abused the body of something holy, and they accused him of this, and he spent time in prison. And that's why we have so many quotes from Hippocrates that are available on the web. But what I fell into with this research is that his statement, let your food be your medicine, medicine your food, is it's very hard to get ahead of him in terms of what he observed. Also, point out that he was a little late, that in Ezekiel 45:12 in the Hebrew scriptures, from over 5,000 years ago. It ends with the leaves of the trees shall be for the healing or medication. And again, in Revelations, which is about the New Testament, around 2,000 years ago, 22:2 ends with the leaves of the trees will be for the healing of the nations. Well, I didn't know these things when I started out, but I've been working 36 years with the leaves of the aloe vera plant, a desert lily. And the point I will give you these past quotation is that this village healer, Don Helio in Belize, who was taught by the Mayan priests, is in harmony with all the above statements. Now, Nikola Tesla is quoted saying, if you to understand electricity is to understand the mind of God. Now, that three-letter word's thrown around a lot and has many different terms for it, but I like what Socrates of ancient Greece realized, that something very important is going on Earth and in the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, which human beings were. And he says, whatever this power is, it's the prime mover of the universe. So I called it the creative, organizing, designing power that is active and is well demonstrated in the code of DNA, which requires an electromotive force, energy frequency, which I think is provided by the vibrations in water. You can't have plant or animal cells alive doing their thing or their biochemistry that is written in the DNA in the plant in the animal kingdom without an energy force, which I think is provided by oxygen with two hydrogen molecules that move things inside the cell for this DNA, and that the DNA has information to control cellular synthesis. Now, as I told you in the introduction, that Thomas Edison said that the physicians of the future would use electricity instead of drugs. And the fact that so many people say everything that Edison believed or thought or developed actually originated with Tesla. I got tried to get his things to find out that anywhere in there you have anything about biology or health, and I couldn't find it. However, in a article in Scientific American that I read more than 30 years ago, it says that Bell Laboratory, I believe, is one of the Northeast major laboratories, purified chains of DNA from inside a cell and put them in an electrolyte solution in a chamber, and then put an induction fill around the cell with these chains of DNA. And by analyzing it, it had the properties of an integrated circuit with transistors in it. This I found electrifying because this is a introduction to the idea that I showed you, that E equal MC squared, that energy is very important in this farmer thing, because I look at myself as being trapped into the Newtonian universe of where you measure things in inches or meters, and you weigh things by pounds or kilograms, and that to get into energy is a real challenge. And I apologize that I'm not capable of addressing this, but the human body is run by electrolytes across the membranes inside the cell and between cells, and sodium and chloride, calcium and potassium and magnesium run the low current, DC current that runs all the activities of the biochemistry of the human body. Now, Nikolai Tesla also said that physics of the universe, energy, frequencies, electromotive forces, magnetism, and biochemistry are all involved in cellular synthesis. And this very quickly got, just before World War II, I believe it was Max Planck that got the Nobel Prize for this concept of quantum theory. And this has to do with this new textbook trying to explain the life functions in terms of energy. And I feel a certain amount of comfort that I found a quote saying that if someone tells you they understand quantum theory, and let me explain it to you, beware. They say no one understands the subject. And I'll be the first to stand up and say, this is above my head. As I say, I'm trapped in the Newtonian universe where most of us are. But Nikolai Tesla also said, if you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequencies, and vibration. So this textbook that I held up by A.S. Nadu, that each element of the composition of the matter chart is a package or a quanta of stable energy. Biological compounds are the total package of the energy of each element. And we started out that all of this has to do with E equal mc squared, whereas the M is for the mass, which old textbooks talk about the biological substances. Well, Nadu talks about the energy being transported across membranes within the cell and between the cells and in the organs. And of course, the C stands for the speed of light. And you'll see there that it's 299,792,459 meters per second, or I can't handle figures that high, but it's 186,282 miles per second. So that means if you multiply the mass by that, you got a lot of energy. And if you doubt this, every time on TV you see an atomic bomb go off, you see one of the highest molecular weights on the composition of matter chart, instantaneously by a fuse composed of dynamite converted to energy, which makes a lot of heat and a lot of damage. Now, this is, we've shown time and time again, the stable elements are packages of energy. And the simplest is the hydrogen, which has a proton and one electron around it. And as you go to the right and toward the bottom, you get heavier molecular weights. And uranium is down there at one of the high ones, which is used to make the atomic bomb. But there's energy in each one of these little square packets of energy. And modern science is trying to move on to explain that the management of energy is part of the process of life. And I held up when we were talking about that the artists, it doesn't matter whether it's painting by the numbers or Leonardo da Vinci, they're all work with the primary colors and the mixtures of them to make all the colors of the rainbow. And that the organizing, creating power in the universe use this as essentially the artist palette to make the greatest composition that's ever been made, which is the universe, in addition to what's going on with Earth and our moon and sun and each cell within your body. Now, light comes from the sun. I just want to make a point that this thing about energy is very important. And if it's over my head and your head too, that light comes from the sun, which looks white. But if you run it through a prism, it will bend the different frequencies of that white light, and it shows those frequencies from the red down to the violet. And very important, right between the green and the blue, there is a narrow band that comes from the sun that lands on the chloroplasts in plants, particularly in the ocean, one-cell plants. And the process of photosynthesis starts where carbon dioxide is converted to chains, which are the chains for amino acids eventually, for fatty acids, and even the carbohydrate chain of carbon to carbon bonds have a little bit of that energy from the sun that was captured by the chloroplasts. And this thing about energy is very important in life. And I think if you're going to rely on substances like dietary supplements, you should know something about the importance of what is going on, and that modern science, we're getting into a little here, is validating ancient insight and wisdom. And these are the wavelength frequencies of energy received from the sun's energy. And if you notice again there in the blue to the green right there is the area where photosynthesis hits the chloroplast to start the energy on Earth. Everything that's having to do with life that starts out with this little band of energy coming from our sun. And the algae is eaten by the rotifers, or the one-celled plant animals, all the way up to larger animals. And of course, human beings are on land the highest predator. That everything eats something else to get its energy, but it all started from the sun. Now, in the chromosomes, the code there is made up of 4 different elements on the composition of matter pattern that is the code in DNA or our genes. And of course, it was a amazing thing to me. I never read it anywhere that the DNA code in the plant kingdom is just exactly the same as the DNA code of the animal kingdom, including human beings. And these are the 4 different elements that make up that code. And I think it's very similar to the primary colors of the energy that comes from the sun, whereas you can take red, blue, and yellow and modify them with white, and you can make all the colors that has ever been used to make great works of art. And this hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen is all the great works of the plant and animal kingdom that is written in the DNA. And that the chromosome is essentially a biocomputer. In this illustration here, there are 3 different ways they've tried to explain to understand how chromosomes control every cell in the animal kingdom and in the plant kingdom. In the blue is composed of phosphate molecules, which show the molecules in the center, and it's back to just blue on the far right, yes. And that the code is suspended in the gold there. They show like plates to the far right, or the actual little molecules of DNA in the center thing, and then just showing you that it's adenine always combined with thymidine, and guanidine always with cytidine. It's called complementary binding. But this is what runs your cells and requires nutrient molecules and cellular synthesis to make the compounds of life. And it all starts out with lifeless nutrients, and with this code that is in every living cell. This is in every cell of the human body. And there's, again, these are the 4 nucleic acid molecules that are used to make up that code, and the plates inside there that was yellow, adenine, guanine, thymidine, cytidine. If you'll notice, there are only carbon molecules, hydrogen molecules, oxygen and nitrogen molecules to make up this code, much like the primary colors with white to modify it in the energy spectrum that comes from the sun. Now, I told you about the experiment I read in Scientific American, that the DNA change had the properties of an integrated circuit with transistors and the chromosomal change, which I found electrifying because it means that there is information stored in the DNA change, just like the lines of code that are in your cell phone or your desktop computer or any of your type of computer that you have. So electric frequencies can activate an inactivated gene. In turn, this biochemistry of life is controlled. Now, this is the front of that book, of the most recent biochemistry book, that tries to explain life in terms of energy management instead of former biochemistry texts that gave cascades, multiple steps of biochemical compounds that ended up in life. Now, I admit my limitations on trying to explain to you some of the most advanced ideas that are going on in science that validate the ancient wisdom that how important nutrition is. But now I'd like to tell you the true story of Don Helio Ponte, who was a village healer in Belize. And he was trained by the Mayan priests that studied the heavens and built pyramids in South America. And this is the book. And you see at the bottom a nurse from California with Don Helio, heard about him and decided her name was Rosita Vargo, thought that she'd go down in Belize and learn everything that Don Helio knew in about 2 or 3 years and write a book. Well, she ended up spending about 17 years, if I remember correctly, from the book. And here is the California nurse walking through the jungle with Don Helio. You notice it just barely comes up to her shoulder. And there is a facial picture of this nurse from California that went down there and wrote this book. These are pictures at the top of the inside of the hut of Don Helio. And in plastic sacks, he had things that he picked in the jungle that the Mayan priests taught him how to do, and dried them as leaves. And down at the bottom, you see Rosita actually processing some of the jungle leaves and barks and blossoms and seeds that Don Helio would collect in the jungle. Now, one of the things that caused her to stay more than 3 years, that when you were out in the jungle, the Mayan priest taught him a mantra or a prayer of thanksgiving from the creative power in the universe for providing this, that you give thanksgiving when you collected it. Then you learned another mantra or prayer while you're processing it to preserve the sastun. That's the name of the book. Tune means the spirit of the plant that is responsible for the healing, which through these mantras or prayers, you want to keep it going in the processing of the leaf. And then you learned another mantra or prayer when you made a tea with these plant materials when you give it to the patient. So there was a lot to learn, because was different for each plant and what you were going to use it for in the patient. Here you see him with his Don Julio with his pack on his back, and he's clipping different leaves and branches and things from in the jungle. Now, if that was just the story of why the nurse went down there, but in his hut, he had 2 sealed photographs. One was from the Queen of England, and one was from George Bush Sr., President of the United States. Both of them have in the handwriting and signature of the Queen and the President, thanking him for his contributions to world health. And there's a story behind the story of this, that under the President Nixon administration, they decided that cancer was a terrible thing in the country, so many people dying from it, and we should start a national institute to study cancer and develop a cure for it and to save lives. Well, in response to this, parents that had children with leukemia, people that had alcoholism and mental illness and autoimmune diseases and infectious diseases all said, well, what about us? And so before it was over with, they developed the National Institutes of Health. And each institute was focused on a different health challenge. Now, the next part of the story is that after about 10 years and over $10 billion had been in tax funds given to the National Institutes of Health, senators called the heads of particularly the Cancer Institute, up for hearings, and they said, look, here we've sent you all this tax money in the instance of the common cancers like breast cancer in females, prostate cancer in males, and lung cancer in both males and females is greater than it was when we first started giving you money. People don't live any longer with the treatments you've come up with. What did you do with the money we gave you? Why haven't you given us any results? Well, the scientists got the message. They got to get something that works if they want to keep getting money. So what they did is they got together for workshops, and they said, well, what did human beings do in the past when there were no pharmaceuticals? And so they developed what they call ethnobiology teams. That I first saw the article in Scientific American, where they had people on these teams that could read ancient languages, that people that understood the artwork that was done at the time. And oftentimes they had in there showing them thousands of years ago what they were doing with people with different kinds of problems. Well, one of these ethnobiology teams went down to Belize, and since Donna Helio Ponte was one of the last living known healer that the Mayan priests had trained, they followed him around in the jungle and made, every time he got some kind of plant, they would look at what kind of plant is this. Sometimes a biologist could say the Latin name for it, and they would dig it up, roots, and they took it back to greenhouses in London and greenhouses up in the Washington area to grow it up. And so this is why he had those 2 portraits of the Queen of England and George Bush, thanking him for the contributions he had made to world health, because one of these ethnobiology teams had gone down and spent some time with him in the jungle. Now, here he is at the end of the day. He's on his way back, and you can see his hut up there, a little higher ground. And he was walking along with the nurse, and he made this statement: I don't understand these scientists. They're looking for poisons. They want to poison cancer. That is not what I was taught. I was taught that one must fortify the sick body, not poison it, to foster healing and to restore health. And this nurse made the point: this diminutive little uneducated man, this village healer, who could not read, who had never read a book, never been in a library, never heard a radio or viewed television, had captured in his simple words the essence of the worldwide scientific quest to conquer disease. As he said, why would you look for something that was a poison? What you look for is something to fortify and strengthen the body. And I hope that you catch that everything that I quoted you before, going all the way back to the Hebrew scriptures through ancient Greece, and in the Dark Ages, the father of pharmacology, Paracelsus, was quoted as saying that God put into nature everything that was needed to heal the body. The challenge of science is to find it. And Paracelsus took bark, leaves, blossoms. He dried them much like Don Heliopathy, and then he made a tea and had them to drink the tea. Then of the residual, he would burn it to an ash and have them to consume that too. And that was his version of, I would say, the oldest dietary supplements. He said that in the plants, what the body needs for healing has been provided by what I call the creative organizing and designing power in the universe. Now, I had an opportunity to attend a day of science held by the Council for Responsible Nutrition in Washington, D.C. in the year 2005. And the platform speaker was Bruce Ames, PhD, from University of California. And he is the most cited living scientist on planet Earth, because when he was a young man, he developed an assay that is used worldwide in drug development and any new organic compounds, that with his process called the Ames test, you can determine if this new compound has a propensity to cause mutations of genes, because it's mutations of genes that causes various developmental diseases in children, as well as mutations cause malignancies or cancer. Well, Dr. Bruce Ames made a major thing to say in his virtually 20 years of published research that he wanted to announce a new field of nutraceutical research. And he gave at least nearly an hour of series of experiments that had been published that proved that nutrition influences gene expression. There was no question. And he says more science needs to be done on this. And I don't know whether you can hear the echo from the ancient Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament in terms of those original empiric statements that nutrition influences gene expression. And of course, it's gene expression that controls cellular synthesis of bioactive molecules, of hooking together all these elements to make the biochemistry and physiology of life. Now, Dr. Ames was followed by an hour by Stephen Mutzplatz, the University of Minnesota, I believe it was. And he showed that no question about it in the research that optimal nutrition activates or upregulates health promoting genes or gene expression. And a good example of this is the genetic information that is translated by cellular synthesis to make interferons, interleukins, chemokines for host defense and healing of our body. In addition, he showed, contrary to optimal nutrition, that optimal nutrition inactivates or downregulates unhealthy gene expression. An example of that would be the changes in the biochemistry of the DNA that I've been showing you, the code of life in the chromosomes, that is changed to necessary to make carcinogenesis, to make malignant cells. Now, again, I want to point out that in our public schools and in universities, and it's been spread on and on, they claim giants of science, that the fathers of all of medicine and science were a bunch of either agnostics, atheists, or minimally free thinkers with no interest in the spiritual matters or belief in the deity. And if you have any question about this, this is why the Ten Commandments have been removed from the walls of federal courts, that statues of Moses with the Ten Commandments have been removed from public buildings, and that in public schools, many of them no longer have any prayers, or they ban any studies of the King James Version of the Bible or any of its other translations. Now, the reason I mention this is because I'd like to quote from Nikola Tesla that we pointed out, and I want to share this quote by this so-called atheist. His quote was, "The gift of mental power comes from God, a divine being. If we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power. My mother taught me to seek all truth in the Bible." That's from Tesla, that is misquoted and said to not believe that there is a creative, organizing, designing power in the universe. Now, Charles Darwin, the author of the text of the book that is so often quoted as being his contribution that there is no divine power, is quoted saying that life is a being due to such powerful and full of knowledge as God, which created the universe, is in our finite minds omnipotent and omniscient, and revolts our understanding to suppose that his benevolence is not unbounded. I have the view that all organic beings have been developed through variation and natural selection. And when we speak of Charles Darwin, in my travels to lecture in now 15 different countries, I had a luncheon in the United Kingdom with current living family members of Darwin. And I have to tell you, one of the reasons they wanted to meet with me was to tell me that they are all antagonistic and bent out of shape, that Charles Darwin is quoted as being an atheist by these people that control our education in the United States. They said that Charles Darwin was a cornerstone of their local Presbyterian church, that he taught a men's Bible class, and that his travels in his book was his search for how God did all this activity in nature of the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, And it was a search on his part of how in the world this creative, organizing, designing power of the universe did all of this. And they really antagonistic that he's quoted as being a big atheist. Also, I'd like to quote again that some of the scientists that are influential up to this day of our modern laws of physics and mathematics is Sir Isaac Newton, who was involved in original calculus in defining the laws of physics. He said, quote, and it was in Latin, "The purpose of science is to understand the mind of God." Quite an unusual statement for a man quoted to be an atheist. He went on further to say this most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. And from true lordship, it follows that the true God is living, intelligent, powerful, from other perfections, that is supreme and supremely perfect. This is by Sir Isaac Newton. Now, Paracelsus, the father of Western pharmacology, said all man needs for health and healing has been provided for man by God in nature. The challenge of science is to find it. And I have a book on all the translations of Paracelsus, and in our education system to try to say he's one of the big atheists, kind of difficult when you really look into what the truth of the matter is. Now, in our modern times, and we showed the equation E equal mc squared that is particularly identified with Einstein, and this is a quote from Einstein. In view of such harmony in the cosmos, which I, with my limited human mind, am able to recognize, there are yet people who say there is no God. But what really makes me angry is when they quote me for support of such views. And he ends with saying, God does not play dice with the universe. And so I have attempted to go from ancient wisdom taught by the Mayan priests here in North and Central and South America that is in harmony with their observations with also the Hebrew prophets and founding scientists through the ages. And I hope that you realize that I started out in 1985 working with the Food and Drug Administration with middle of the road modern science and scientific methodology, and that this has turned into what I would call virtually a spiritual journey, because I came to realize that all that our genes call for in the animal kingdom have been provided in abundant and also in very trace amounts in some things like omega-3 fatty acids are very low in the plant kingdom, and you really have to eat nuts on a regular basis to even get any of them. But that in the plant kingdom, what our genes in the animal kingdom call for to make the compounds to carry on biochemistry of life were provided. And the next thing that hit me was such a surprise that the DNA or nucleic acids in the plant kingdom are exactly in function just like the genes in the animal kingdom. And that raises a question: if you're creating life to start out, why would you start totally over and have a totally different way of doing it? So, as I say, this has turned into a spiritual journey. And in fact, with more comprehensive nutrition that we have been able to put in New Eden by our research of finding molecules that are low or absent or not present in the modern food chain, that you can restore what the genes are programmed to have good health. And this, we have been amazed that we have had reported to us over 800 different deviations from normal health. I don't use any disease terms. I just say we are supplying through nutrition molecules used in the biochemistry and synthesis of life, which is all normal physiology and biochemistry. We're providing nutrient molecules that used to be abundant in family gardens and orchards and in the plants of that time. And that this has turned into what I would call a validation of the ancient wisdom that something very powerful is creative, organizing, and designing power in the universe to control and make possible human life and health. With that, I end this lection, and I hope it means something to you, that you realize that by adding this to your diet, you can prevent deviations from normal health, and you can restore the biochemistry and the physiology of health back to the normal zone with more comprehensive nutrition. With that, we will wait for the next time we get together.
Well, there we go. So Dr. McDaniel, there were a couple, that was a great presentation. I loved tying it all together, and I love that simple man was so brilliant. Why are the scientists looking for the poison? And I think a lot of us really could relate to that. A lot of us in the live chat were having a conversation about some of that. You've talked to us before about light, um, and the frequency of light being energy and the sun coming through. And I was at a meeting recently, and somebody was talking about the stuff that they spray in the sky, the chemtrails and stuff, that they spray barium and aluminum, and that's actually how that is being delivered to us. It's not necessarily that we're breathing it so much, but that the light frequency is coming through the aluminum, and the frequency of that is being delivered to us that way. Is that possible?
Well, one of the questions that I noted in the comments that they pointed out in nature that there are deleterious things to health. And time again, I've used the statement that the challenge to the human condition is balance. And this was recognized by Dr. Hans Selye long ago, who's given credit to being the father of human physiology. And he called this balance within the cells homeostasis. And it's not just a quest for balance in our own cells because our genes are biphasic in that it's kind of like a thermostat on the wall. You have a set of genes that increase amounts of material or activities in biochemistry and physiology, and you have genes that decrease the amount of activity and all. And it's with optimal nutrition, you get a balance that's not a comfort zone like we have for a thermostat on the wall, but a balance of homeostasis. Well, the human condition is such that I would say it goes far beyond the biochemistry within our cells. We tend to be too conservative or too liberal. We can't just get in the middle and recognize some of the attributes of, say, liberal people who want to help people and do things for people. And then the conservatives that say, well, you want to help people that want to help themselves. You don't want to just have freeloaders, that you want to help people that want to help themselves and have a goal. And so there's a balance. So even in our society, you don't want to be too like in marriage. You don't want to control your wife, or your wife don't want to control your husband, but you want a mutual respect that I would call balance. And we need that among nations. Like right now, it's just terrible what's happening in Ukraine. Why can't we just have a balance of peace, that each country is taking care of its own problems? Just like in China, they've got all kind of problems with their own population. Why should we be in international conflict in so many different ways with the largest population nation in the world? Why can't we just live in peace and harmony? And this homeostasis is called like harmony in the cells. And yes, it is true that in the plant kingdom, you have some of the most toxic molecules that exist in terms of the amount of toxicity that you can cause. So, but you have plants that supply what our genes need to have good biochemistry or good health. And that's why there is power in the plant kingdom, but it really comes back to the programming that is in the DNA or nucleic acid in our 46 chromosomes that are inside every cell. And I don't want to get too much into this, but we've got, they talk about 30,000 genes in those 46 chromosomes. You've got certain genes that when the sperm hits the egg, it makes different layers of the embryo. And once the miniature little human being is made in about 6 weeks, those genes that move cells in different layers to form the organs turn off, and their genes turn on for growth. And there's humongous growth inside the mother's uterus up until the time of birth, and yet that growth continues as the child develops up until the teenage years. And once you get your full size body, and all those genes are down regulated, and genes are turned on for maintenance and function that have been going all along to supply the body with oxygen and nutrients and to take waste products away. That's been going on all along. So the incredible programming that is in our genes is enough to make you stop and think, gee, how did this come to be? How could such details come to be? As some would have you believe, a bunch of elements got all excited and decided to get organized. And if you really look at nature, when you leave it alone, it gets more disorganized. It doesn't get to a higher energy level, it gets to lower energy levels rather than what happens in life. So, yes, there are deleterious things in nature. And, just like gravity, if you fall more than about, well, actually, I know about 5 people that just were standing and they fell and they hit their head in such a manner that they didn't live but hours after that. So even as valid as gravity is, you need to respect gravity.
Right.
If you go up high enough, particularly in airplanes or balloons, there's almost 100% guarantee that you're not going to live. Yet we depend on gravity. We can't even walk across the street or be erect without it working in harmony with the gravity that influences us all. So that is the quest for balance and harmony within and without of the human body. So that would be my response to that question about the deleterious thing.
Yeah.
Is I'm working on a lecture now that I think is very interesting because if you look at that chart of elements, there's chromium,
Mhm.
and then there's also cobalt. And cobalt is particularly noted for being very hard, very durable, and fights corrosion. Well, so that because of this, they made the first artificial joints for the hips, the knees, the ankles, the shoulders from primarily cobalt covered with chromium. And when they put these joints together, the original ones, they put metal against metal, against metal. They put a round ball into a socket that matched to it all, but very fine amounts of wear occurred. And in the serum of the body and the blood supply, carried this cobalt and chromium to the cells, and particularly deleterious to the nervous system. And so now they're no longer uh, use the chromium against chromium or uh, cobalt against cobalt. They use very special plastics or ceramics, and they don't last as well as chromium against chromium or metal against metal, but you don't get these deleterious effects that, yes, very desirable to have long lasting artificial joints, but you don't want them producing toxic molecules that can react and
Travel in your
and
body. Yeah.
poison our bodies. So this is again, I say, is the constant quest for balance in all human activity, not down to the cellular level, and then to our relationships with our children, our spouses, our neighbors, between nations, is always seeking harmony and balance, and I would say peace is the biggest challenge to the human condition. And all of this, you can't do it without optimal nutrition that supports the engineering and design of life that is written in the genes.
That's very true. So I got an email, I think it was either later last week or maybe on Monday, that you guys are changing some things up and having an added value starting this month. If you go to a monthly subscription at New Eden, and you can find the link in the description of this video. If you use my link and sign up for the monthly subscription, first of all, you get a discount. You know you're going to get your product every month, and they are adding a free box of, is it Milagro probiotic? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Milagro. And let me point this out.
Yeah.
That this New Eden contains ingredients that used to be in the family garden and orchard when they were growing on soil with up to 70 minerals in it. And you allowed it to ripen on the plant so that the genes in the plant could put the nutrients that our genes call for into the fruits and vegetables. Well, when I was a kid in the 1940s, nearly all the grocery stores were owned by a local family, and there were very few things they sold that didn't come within about, say, 50, 60 miles of the grocery store. And you could only have certain products about 4 to 6 weeks a year during the growing season for that area. But now, here, more than 50 years later, nearly all the grocery stores are chains across the country, and we have an agribusiness that supplies these markets. And lo and behold, I can have watermelon year round. I can have raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, various cantaloupes, and all year round. How in the world do they do this? Well, they follow the growth zones, but and they pick the harvest, but they pick it green where it'll have a shipping life and a shelf life, and call it fresh vegetables and fruits. Well, unfortunately, when you pick it green, the principal molecule in it is chlorophyll, and the genes don't call for a lot of chlorophyll.
Mhm.
And so this is why dietary supplementation, by allowing the fruit or vegetable to mature on the vine, and if you tried to ship it, it would be rotten by the time it got to the store, but you can freeze dry it and turn it to a powder, and all these critical molecules that the genes call for are present in there by freeze drying process that keeps it from deteriorating. And it looks like that the dietary supplement is incredibly magic. And people say it's a miracle. And I tell them it's not a miracle. Miracles are exceedingly rare. And this happens over and over and over again in not only dozens, but hundreds of thousands of people, because our genes are designed for these molecules that are in the plants that you can restore and put into a supplement. And you're not doing something new or different. You're just restoring what used to be in the family garden or orchard. And that's what your genes require. And it looks, as people say, miracle. And if they keep on doing this, I say, yes, there was originally a miracle a long time ago, that the creative, organizing, and designing power in the universe put in the plant kingdom what our genes require to hook together in cellular synthesis to make bioactive molecules that are structure and function in our body to have good health. And all we're doing is just restoring. We're not treating, curing, or
Right.
mitigating disease or syndromes or correcting abnormal health condition, which only in our country a pharmaceutical claim to do. All we're doing is just restoring optimal nutrition so that the cells can seek homeostasis. And when you got homeostasis, you're healthy and you don't have deviations from normal. I hope that gets across. Now, when people give us their credit card number and permission to send what they want each month, this is all handled by computer, and so there's less hands-on activity, and it cuts cost. Well, we pass that cost on to people by giving a 20% discount if they say they need 1, 2, or 3, whatever amount of the New Eden they need per month. They may won't have children because families will find out they don't have to go to the pediatrician on a regular basis. And if they have different problems that are deviation from normal, that there are the molecules in New Eden that keeps that I call preventive and interventional health management, that you support the engineering and design of life that is coded in the genes for balance and homeostasis. Well, in the winter of 2010, Scientific American had a special section about worldwide research that is going on, that I have done a monthly newsletter on, trying to summarize it, about that the bacteria in the large bowel contribute to, or if you have the right kind of bacteria in your large bowel, it contributes to biochemically working on certain nutrient molecules to make them available, but they're not even water soluble and can't be absorbed in the serum to be carried around to the cells until this bacteria is active. And so this prebiotic or Milligro is restoring. We've tested it recently to make sure there's still billions of these I call them friendly bacteria, that you wouldn't want to go putting it into your body, except by processing it so that it's acceptable
Mhm.
And that's what we're those people that go on the automatic monthly orders. We give them a supply of the Milligro to recognize their loyalty and support that makes it possible for Wellness Quest to exist. Unfortunately, the New Eden is expensive to make, and unfortunately, we have to charge a lot more than most supplements, but you get a lot more benefit from restoring and supporting the engineering and design of life in
Mhm.
this manner. And so we are at no additional cost. We're giving this Milligro to try to make it possible for each person to have optimal biochemistry going on in their bowel to support good health. And so that's sharing with people that we reduce the costs. Well, in addition to the discount, we've got these friendly bacteria that you can seed your bowel. Fact is, I won't go into all the things that I put in the newsletter. I have given you before my email. And if you're interested in that newsletter and on the what they call bio farm, FARM, a farm that's active in your large bowel, that I did a summary on this. And again, my email is capital R and the rest of it's lowercase R McDaniel, McDaniel, at Wellness Quest, WLLNESSQUEST.org. If you request this newsletter from the past, I'll send you a copy by email of why this Milligro is so important to add to. And I might add that if you have to take a broad spectrum antibiotic, you kill the friendly bacteria in your gut, and this is a way to replace it. For example, anytime I have to take an antibiotic in the past, I haven't had to do much of it lately. I always eat yogurt, and some people don't like yogurt, but yogurt has some of the friendly bacteria in it. And in fact, the head of the Pasteur Institute about 1900 wrote a book on longevity. Uh, Eli Minichnikov was the head of the Pasteur Institute, and he pointed out that people that ate yogurt and fermented milk called kefir, these are have some of the friendly bacteria in it, that they are healthier and live longer. Well, that's what this Milligro is designed to be just to add a little bit more to the effort to improve nutrition and the function of your GI tract, gastrointestinal tract. I hope that
Yeah,
answers.
no, that's great. That's really helpful. In fact, I'm gonna go change my because I did bulk orders before, so I'm gonna change mine to the monthly. And to me, that's just easier too. Then I know it's coming every month. I know I'll always have my new Eden ready, and then I'm getting a free probiotic too. So, you guys can use the link in the description of this video to order. That same link will take you to the website where you can order Dr. McDaniel's book. You can also contact him there. And when you place your order, there is a little box or description where you can put if you have any uh, abnormality, deviation from normal in
So
your
this is
health.
a way of additional recognition and reward for working with us, and we just pass it on to you. In addition to the 20% discount, you're not charged for the probiotics, and hope that this boosts your health just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And babies and mothers oftentimes have problems with overgrowth of yeast, and this comes from uh, killing off your friendly bacteria, and this is a way to restore it.
That is good to know. Good to know. We have one more question. If you have a little bit more time, I know we're keeping you a little long here today, but do you have any information or experience on people are calling them med beds or like a frequency bed, a light bed, any of those kind of alternative healing devices?
I have seen these on my web, and I have an older son that's particularly interested in this area, and he questions whether some of the claims that are you'll find on the web
Mm.
are as so we say as vigorous or robust as some of the statements, but I have a hard time ignoring Nikola Tesla and what is his name? His commercial. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, I'm blocking on the name that developed the light bulb,
Oh,
Edison.
mm-hmm.
That said that the physicians of the future could use electricity. Well, electricity influences gene expression and you can, with the proper frequencies, it seems like you can see these. Remember that research I said that they purified the strands of chromosomes and put it in an induction field, which is positive and negative on each side, kind of like magnetism and it's in that zone that it had the properties of a integrated circuit with transistors.
Hmm.
Well, this raises a question that I have to think about. Why not with certain frequencies? You can't tune into the genes that are not turned on to use the nutrients you've made available to make the bioactive compounds that some genes may be, shall we say, sleeping, and you can wake them up and tune in just like you do to certain channels on your TV or your radio and to
Right.
combine that. But this is in the very early stages of development. However, Royal Rife in the 1930s uh, first found out that the frequencies in the UV spectrum killed pathogenic bacteria. And he was using this UV light to treat the number one cause of death at that time in the pre antibiotic era. And organized medicine, the sickness industry, attacked him like he was a fugitive from hell. They raided and took all his equipment and tried to destroy his reputation as a healthcare person because if you notice behind me, you see this brick wall. There's not a brick wall there, but when they came up with this, I said, this reminds me, since 1985, I've been hitting my head against a brick wall of the attitude of professionals and our public who feel like there's got to be a drug for any problem you've got. Well, Paracelsus, the father of pharmacology's most famous statement was, all drugs are poisons. The benefit depends on the dose. And if you watch real closely on all the TV ads of the new wonderful drugs that are in patent and are very expensive, the first part of the advertisement will be pretty colors and beautiful people and beautiful music about all the benefits of it. And all of a sudden they go black and white and talk as fast as they can, telling you that this new drug can destroy your kidneys, your bone marrow, your heart problems, strokes, and all the downside that what Paracelsus said over 500 years ago is still true. Whereas with nutrition, you support the engineering and design of life with safe, effective, and economical nutrition.
Perfect. Very interesting. I was just sharing while you're speaking, there's this video that came on today on Twitter, and they were saying, do you think this is old or new tech? And it was kind of what you were talking about, the like two magnetic plates, and it was manipulating. Let me see if I can get it to play again. It was more about manipulating objects and they were using frequency to do it. And it was talking about sound or creating using sound waves, levitation by using sound waves and a frequency that approximately double the highest frequency that humans can create sound fields and introduce small objects. They seem to be trapped. Low amplitude waves, something, and then they manipulate the objects. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting and made me think of some of the stuff you were talking about. So,
Well, while you were putting this up, I held up a book right off of my shelf. It's called The Body Electric by Robert Brecker, who was a VA orthopedic surgeon researcher. And I think when you were asking about frequencies and all, they put these electrodes around, and our brain has all types of electrical activity going on.
Yeah.
You can hook up and you can find the electrical activity of the heart. You can do EMGs, electrical activity to move your muscles. There is electricity and this effect going on. But Dr. Brecker was realized that some animals that you can cut off their leg, like salamanders, and they'll grow a new one. You can cut their tail off and they'll grow a new one.
Wow.
He showed that you could take part of their head off and their eye out on one side, and it would grow the back of the head with the eye, and all the intricate aspects of the eye could be grown. And of course, in the embryo, there are genes that everything develops in the early stages. And his idea was if he knew how to handle electricity to turn on genes, that GIs that lost their arms or their legs, they could grow their leg or their arm back.
Oh my gosh.
He took frogs and grew legs on them, extra legs. And in response to this, the conventional scientists, while he was off on a conference, destroyed his laboratory. He came back and found out it was on the outside the building in the waiting to be hauled off as junk. But that's evidence of what I'm talking about, that brick wall behind me.
Yeah.
We have a society that is drug oriented, not only legitimate prescription drugs, but even illegal drugs. We hear almost daily of the thousands of young people that have died from fentanyl. It comes out of Mexico. Fentanyl is not like a vampire that in the night steals up and jumps on you and injects itself into you. Human beings willfully believing that there's something good that they're looking for in different types of drugs that have been seeded with this fentanyl, which is extremely poisonous. And the point I wanted to make is that human beings cooperate with these deaths because we're so drug oriented. If you got any kind of problem, we got a drug for you, or we got one in development that'll be here pretty soon. To any problem you've got, well, that's not like Paracelsus said, all drugs are poisons. Well, they've all got a bad side to them, and I think and have found that it's incredible that in the plant kingdom, nutrient molecules have been placed and are developed that are broad spectrum of the requirements of our genes. If you have it in your diet, you can make the bioactive compound to move the physiology and biochemistry to the normal zone by cooperating with the engineering and design of life. And that's safe, effective, and economical.
That's the way we need to do it right now, especially with everybody facing what's going on in the world. So you guys, thank you again, Dr. McDaniel. You just give us so much great information. You guys, please check out the link below. I will put Dr. McDaniel's email in this description as well. If you have any questions and you want to reach out to him, he is a wealth of knowledge, and he's doing this out of a love for people in the world and wants to get this information out there. So please feel free to reach out to him. And get your new Eden shipped to you once a month with your free probiotic. Use my link in the description. It supports the channel and it gets you healthy, and that's what we want for everybody. So you guys have a great week, and we will be back tomorrow with Johnny Litecoin, talking about what in the world's going on with Litecoin. There's stuff popping everywhere. So and you guys know, keep your eyes on, get your silver. Cliff High's talking about it like crazy. We may only have a couple more days or weeks to go, because once it makes the $5 a day jump, you have 16 days till unobtainium. So see you guys. Bye.